Hey folks, welcome to the corresponding video to episode 3 of Capturing Nature, the nature photography podcast that examines the creative, technical, and unpredictable elements of photography in the wild outdoors. This is the video that goes with the photographer screen segment, in which we're talking about the brand new Lightroom masking feature that in the 11.1 Lightroom Classic release has made some major advancements and, as I was saying earlier, has revolutionized the way I edit my images. So while I talked about it a little bit in the podcast, the reality is a video, you're going to be able to see much more about how I go about editing my images. And so in a minute here, I'll let you stop watching me and we'll jump to my screen. But this feature, rather than now doing a bunch of bulk global adjustments to images, I now tend to select my highest quality images, or those that I like the most, and do very specific edits using this masking feature. And today I'm going to focus on bird and wildlife images rather than landscape, because how I edit and even macro, I edit those slightly differently. In the past, I used to have a bunch of bulk presets based on ISO, and now what I do is I tend to go in a little more and address each image according to the type of image and what I hope to accomplish with it. So having said that, let's just jump right on into editing these images that you see in Lightroom. What I've done, I've picked a selection of images from 2021 on some of my various workshops with Wildside Nature Tours and with Precision Camera and Video in Austin, Texas. So here on the screen, we're in the library module of Lightroom, and I've got a bunch of images selected. We won't get to all of them clearly, but I just wanted to have some. I tend to be a little spontaneous of what I might want to do. So the first image that you'll see is one that has generally already been processed, and the second image is one, and the crop might be a little bit different, but the second image, so here's one already completed, and then here's one that remains to be edited, so you could kind of see what I'm working towards with these various images, and the final product versus what we'll start with in Lightroom to edit. So let me just go ahead and pick one of these images here. I think I'm going to start with this harbor seal from our Southeast Alaska 2021 workshop. So let's jump over into the develop module. And of course, as you see, here's a bunch of my bulk presets that at one time I used with large numbers of images. But my approach is a little different now. And one of the first things I do is I always create a custom camera profile using a color checker. Passport, the newest model. And so I'm going to apply that first. That's for my EM1X. This image, if you're ever not sure what camera you used, you can just cycle through the information by pressing the I key. And here you see I shot it with my EM1X. And so I've already applied that color profile. Then what we're going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new mask. And you do that by clicking over here on the upper right corner. This circle is how we get to our masking feature. And you'll see you have add new mask. I can select subject. I can select the sky. And obviously in this image, there is no sky. You can use a brush, linear gradient, a radial gradient. So these are kind of holdovers from the previous masking features. You can pick a color range or a luminance range. So a color range is I might want to pick, I can use a color picker and pick, like for instance in this image, if I want to do a color range, I'd pick on this kind of a green and it's going to select all of that. No, I'm going to undo that. If I want to do a luminance range, this is focusing more on overall, white to black tone. So if I wanted to pick all the darks, and this isn't picking on colors clearly because I picked on dark, so this is going on tonal value rather than color value. So then it picked all that color. I'm going to undo that as well, because what I want to do and how I tend to edit most of my wildlife and bird images is I first select my subject. Now it did a great job. You can really see, and let me zoom in here. You can see how well this isolated this harbor seal from the surrounding ice. But the edits I want to apply, I also would like to apply to the in focus ice. So I'm going to add a little bit to this particular mask. And what I did is I went up here to mask and I clicked on add, and then I picked brush. Okay. Now what this is going to do, and I can increase using my mouse. I don't use touchpads. I'm terrible at touchpads, but very similar if you're using a touchpad. If I just slide my finger up and down my mouse, like so, you can see as I adjust my mouse, then my brush gets bigger. So I want it about this size, and I'm going to paint and just try to capture this in focus ice that's around this seal right here. So it, my depth of field is going to be about the same. Don't want to go too far back. And so that looks pretty good to me right there. Now what I want to do, I have a preset I've created for basic sharpening to wildlife and birds. So if I click on my Lehoy bird sharpening and clarity preset, you're going to see it adjusted clarity to 30. And it adjusted sharpness to 25. Now I might actually pull back. And clarity, what clarity does is it's basically a mid-tone enhancer. And when you enhance your midtones, it has a bit of a sharpening effect to it. So I feel like I'm going to pull that back a little bit. It also tends to darken a little bit. So I'm just going to bump my exposure back up a little bit to match the surrounding. Now what I want to come in and do, I'm going to open up shadows just a hair, give a little more opening, and you can see the difference. If I pull my shadows all the way down, if I pull them all the way, way to the right, too much. But if I just open it up, give a little more detail to that area. Whereas if I did a lot of exposure, you see how quickly that would get out of hand, right? So really in this case, what I really want to do is open up the shadows a bit on this seal. And again, you see it's still very consistent across my image here. And texture, if we zoom in here on a part of this, watch this ice when I apply a bit of a texture. Now I'm going to go to extremes. See how fuzzy that is if I go way left. If I go way right, it just gets absurdly sharp. But I can go up here pretty good ways without creating any noise. And I like that. That's now as I zoom back out. And by the way, to zoom in and zoom out, I press the space bar and I click, and that's going to zoom in. If I let go, I go back to my mask brush. And if I press the space bar again, I click, I zoom back out. So again, space bar, click your mouse, zoom in, space bar, click your mouse, zoom out. You can also use your navigator percentages up here, or we're just going to zoom out. I like using the mouse and the space bar better. Now, I do want to run just a little bit of noise reduction on those adjustments I've made. And I don't really know that there's too much else in this particular case that I want to adjust. I think that's looking pretty good for me. But I am going to now go in and I am going to apply some global adjustments. Vibrance, I tend to like right around 20, and I can go in and if you see what happens if we go too far right, if we go all the way left, then it loses all color. But it'll just give a little more pop. And by the way, when I am shooting in camera, I shoot in muted. The JPEG on the back of my camera, and I will do a segment on this in the podcast, the image I want to look at, I don't, it's a processed JPEG on the back of your screen. I don't want my camera applying some color profile, a lot of processing. I want my raw file to be as raw as it truly can. Many people aren't aware of the potential processing that can occur in camera, but I am. So what I want to do is, if you see here, again, our colors just get crazy, but by punching up that vibrance, it's going to bring out more of the colors. I'm not creating something that wasn't there. I'm utilizing data that is already contained in my raw file, but because I shoot in muted, even I've now applied my camera color profile correction, so my colors are accurate, but I'm just going to make them pop a little bit more here on this ice, and that is truly how that ice looked, that nice little green touch to it here at this glacier in Alaska. Now, saturation, years ago, I wouldn't apply any in Lightroom. It instantly gave way too much. But here I find that just a minor adjustment will give you a little bit of, in fact, let's just zoom in on that ice and reset saturation. And you'll notice that if I just keep it at a low level, it gives a little more pop without going nuts. So look at there. I mean, now we're crazy blue, and I'll go back to 5, kind of that's usually where I start, and I usually live there pretty well. Now I could, just for grins, let's see what auto white balance does. Yeah, ooh, that got way too yellow. I could come in here and I could take my white balance picker, So right up here on the upper left is the white balance selector and this eyedrop. I could come in on what would be ideal would be to find, 17% gray. And I can come in and try to find, I generally want very little variance, 47, 47, 51, 65, 66, 60. That's not too bad. Let's see what that's going to give us. Yeah, it didn't make too much of an adjustment. You see here on my temperature, 5850 and tint plus 18. I started at 5850 and plus 14. So really my white balance was pretty spot on to begin with. Now, honestly, my histogram looks great. I could potentially pull my blacks a hair down. And you notice I have no clipping in the shadows, no clipping in the highlights. Nice, well-balanced histogram. Again, this is the lens I used was the the M Zuko Digital 150 to 400. And now I'm going to come down here and do my global noise reduction, which I almost always set at the general default of 25. For my sharpening, I'm going to use my mask and I'm going to press Option for Mac. And I'm going to come in here and I only want the sharpening to be done in select areas. So here it is doing sharpening on every pixel and inevitably going to lead to some noise in this image. So I'm going to come down here, put my masking around 38. My radius, I might kick up a hair. You can see once you press that Option key, you can really see there. And now that's extreme. So actually, I'm probably going to leave it around 1.9. And no haloing, no artifact. That might be a little much. Let's just see here. Might pull my sharpening down a little bit. Okay, that looks a little better. Again, we don't want to do a whole lot of pixel peeping, but I think at that particular spot now, I really like how that image has turned out. So let's go to another image. Let's go try a bird image here. Okay, where we can really, and let's see what this image was shot at. It was shot at ISO 1600, which is a great, you see I've got some really nice detail here in the feathers even before I've applied any sharpening or any other effects. And I have a pretty nice histogram here, maybe a tiny bit, maybe a quarter. And it looks like plus 0.015 on exposure. Let me apply my camera profile. That broadened that a little bit. I have a little bit of clipping in the shadows, probably down here. Can't even see. Yeah, if you look, very fine right down there under some of these leaves, so that's fine. And again, I'm going to start out with selecting the subject using the mask. And again, another nice job. But I also want to apply some of those same adjustments to the foliage in front. So again, I'm going to click Add. And I'm going to click Brush because we want to add to our existing mask by using the brush. So you see I'm going to paint in on this vegetation that has the same, I have auto mask on, so that's slowing it down a little bit. Auto mask will follow edges and keep your masking from getting out of hand on the areas you don't want it. So I'm going to paint this stretch of vegetation that's in focus. Maybe a little bit more right in here. And just reduce my brush. Paint right in here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now again, I'm going to go ahead and select my preset, which is bird sharpening clarity, and you could create that. You just come in, you put clarity and sharpness, you come up here, and then you would say save current settings as a new preset, and then you can name it whatever one. If you're Billy Bob Jr. the second, you could say BBJR2, bird sharpening and clarity. And I use it on wildlife and other features, but I just called it bird sharpening clarity because that's what I made it for. So I now have this sharpening applied, and let's take a look here. And you can see, again, really nice details in the feathers here. Take a look at the head. You can see there's a little bit of the eyes all black, but that's fine. That's the color we'd expect. A little bit of shadow here under the feathers. So I'm going to zoom back out, and I might apply just a hair bit of texture to get that to pop even a little more. Apply just a hair bit of noise reduction. And I might just bring those blacks up a hair. You can see now I'm no longer clipping blacks on the eyes. Not that that was a huge deal, but I kind of think that I'm pretty good on that particular image in terms of that. Let's go ahead and apply our global noise reduction of 25. Now, if I want, you see I got a little bit of still noise in this background. So what we can do, we're going to create a new mask, and I'm going to select subject, and we're going to invert. And now I want to get rid of that stretch. I want to subtract that vegetation that I was including just a little while ago. So I'm going to come in here and use the brush, and I'm going to subtract this area that I want to remain sharp. We're going to come in here and we're going to eliminate all of this. And I feel like that's probably looking pretty good right there. Okay. And you know, you can easily show that overlay, or you can turn it off. You can adjust the color of the overlay. I happen to like red. It shows up well for me, but you can pick any color to have this overlay. And sometimes you don't want to see, let me close this out. Sometimes you don't want to see the overlay, so you can just click it off and or turn it back on. So now I know that my mask is all of this in red, that whatever adjustments I select now are going to be applied to this area in red. So I'm going to zoom in here on the background, and as soon as I start to make it, I can either turn it off, or as soon as I start to make some adjustments, it is going to disappear. So now I'm really going to bump up that noise reduction, and you can see now a lot smoother. I'm actually going to pull sharpness back a little bit. I can even pull texture down a little bit, and you can see now how that background's gotten much softer. Maybe pull my highlights back. Let me zoom back out, get a nice look here. I think this image is coming along nicely. Might just do that a little more. All right, let's see how that's looking. Pick that background mask, and I don't really know that I need to do too much more to it. I think I handled the noise there pretty well, what little bit there was. Now I might come in and check my white balance. I'm going to look, 20, that's too much of a difference. 17, 18, whoops. That's not where you want to click, trust me on that. Let me zoom in. Let me grab that color picker, try to get a little tighter. Just not quite. 25, 25, 27, 20. Oh, there we go. Now, that actually looks a lot better on the white balance right there. I might even warm it up a hair more. And look at my histogram. Looking great. No clipping on the shadows or the highlights. And now we're going to go down. We're going to apply our bulk 20 vibrance. Just give it a little more pop. A hair bit of saturation, and let's see here. Well, some of that caused my blacks go down. I'm just going to open it up a hair. Now you notice again, no clipping, blacks or whites. I don't really think I want to open up the shadows any. Overall, maybe a hair bit of contrast, and that's still now my histogram's still looking really good. And I forgot to go down here and apply global sharpening, which I don't really need much of because I've already done the specifics. And I mean, that bird's looking really good. And I can't remember this species. First time I saw and photographed it. Let's see, chestnut-winged syncodes, I believe. And this was taken at about 14,000 feet in elevation in an Ecuadorian national park. So that's one more example of how I use use the Lightroom masking. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more example here. And I wonder what might be a little more interesting here. I tell you what, let's take a look at this sloth image. The sloth image has a little bit more going on in it. And okay, so here's the unedited version of this sloth, and you can see just a hair bit underexposed. So I'm going to bump it up just a hair, not much. Looks like slightly under a half stop. And again, you see I shot on camera muted, and now I'm going to apply my EM1X color profile. And again, let me undo it, and you can see just a hair bit of difference in some of the colors. So overall, my colors were pretty accurate there. Gonna just, I might get a little higher up there, maybe don't want these whites getting too bad here. So again, we're going to go ahead and select our subject. And notice with even all of this vegetation and clutter that it still did a great job of selecting the sloth. And this is a three-toed sloth taken. This image was captured during the 2021 Wildside Nature Tours workshop in Panama. So again, I'm going to apply the same preset, my Lightroom sharpening and clarity. Okay. And boy, you can already see really nice coming along there. Nose is nice and sharp. The eyes, a little bit of blur. This is, let's see, pretty slow shutter speed, 1/160th at 1,000 millimeters handheld. And so this sloth was preening and scratching, and he held his head still, which was great at 1/160th. But you see a little bit of movement. I kind of like that. It implies the action of what this sloth is doing, and it obviously felt quite good based on many of the expressions he had on his face. So again, if I put my cursor over my mask box up here, you'll see that it's turning to red what is being applied. And if I pop a little texture, it's going to give that fur even a little more crispness. Really, I might open up my blacks. I'm clipped somewhere just a hair. Let's see what happens when we play with shadows. I don't really think I need to make any adjustments there. And maybe just a hair bit of noise reduction. Don't need much on that part. And honestly, I think I kind of liking where that's at. Now, I do want to do some noise reduction. And let's see how my global edits will handle this. So I'm going to get out of my mask. I'm going to zoom in down here on the corner. Okay. Whoops. And you can see, again, I have not applied any global noise reduction. So let's see what 25 does. Yeah, that's good, but I think I'd like to do some more. And let's go ahead and let's just take a look here. Go ahead and mask. Let me zoom back out. Grab my masking, click the option key, and then really get that sharpening solely on the elements where it needs it. So you can see I'm not really sharpening my background, so I'm not going to create noise by doing that. And we'll go ahead and pop in our vibrance of 20, saturation of 5. And my colors are nice popping. Histogram's looking good. Looks like somewhere, maybe just a hair play somewhere in the deep shadow. So no issues there. I'm going to turn off the information for you. And again, I'm going to come down here. See, I still would like to deal with a little bit of that noise. Oh, it's really not much. But I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new mask and I'm going to select my subject. And now I'm going to do an invert. I'm going to click this box and you can see it is inverted and selected everything other than the sloth. And this is where I really want to get a little stronger with my noise reduction. So I'm going to zoom in on this corner where it's a little easier to see the noise. And now if I really kick that noise reduction up and pull my sharpening back, now you can see that's really smoothed out. And again, if I pull clarity back just a hair and texture down a hair, I'm going to really get rid of some of that. And now take a look up here. Oh, now look how good that corner's looking. So I have a really nice sharp head, face going on here, back, a little bit of movement in the arms from the grooming and the slow shutter speed, which again, this sloth was on an overcast day, as you can see, in vegetation, so not much light, hand holding at 1,000 millimeters. So trying to keep my ISOs down and knowing what that lens was capable of. So I think that that's a nice example, again, of some editing, and I don't really think there's much I need to do. I could move that black down a hair if that was really bothering me about that. Let's see what happens if we apply a little contrast. I don't know that I'm really needing, I don't really think there's much going on. I like the color of the background. I could check. Let's just click on, try out our white balance here. Whoops. I zoomed in. Sorry. Let me do this. And one thing about what I want to do with these videos and podcasts, I'm not going to clean it up to make perfect, because you know what? I'm not perfect and life is messy. So I may not be quite as polished as some of your other fancier YouTubers. And to be honest, I don't give a rip. And as you get to know me better, you'll find out I don't give a rip about a lot of things on that. So there we go. I think that white balance is working a little better. So here we go. In fact, I kind of like this better than the way I'd processed it before. I think it turned out a lot better. Of course, when I processed it before, I was in the field in a rush. So there we go. There's one more example. Let's see. We've done what? 1, 2, 3. Let's try. I think this might be a high ISO image. We could try this one too. Yep, ISO 6400. This was really early in the morning. And as you can see, an immature snow goose at Bosque del Apache. This was taken during the 2021 Precision Camera and Video workshop that I just got back from out there in November. So great time. This morning had some beautiful colors you can see reflected in the water behind. Again, shot in camera muted. Going to apply my color profile. And let's go ahead and start by, and I want you to see how great this masking works when there's reflections involved. Look at that. Not only did it select my subject, but it selected the reflection. That is some really nice stuff. So again, first thing I'm going to apply, my bird sharpening and clarity. Okay, let's zoom in, take a look here. You can already see nice difference. I will go ahead and apply a little bit of noise reduction on this bird since it is a high ISO image. And honestly, I think that's looking really good. I can possibly, now here you can see my highlight alerts, could possibly brighten a hair, pull that back so I'm not losing any detail on my whites. If I pull my highlights down, it might give a little more edginess to the feathers. Don't think I really need to mess with contrast much. And you can see, let's go to extremes and just see how crazy we can get it, but maybe a hair bit. And I think I'm liking that pretty well. I am going to play with my white balance here. 48, 40, that's pretty nice and close. Oh yeah, look, camera did a good job of capturing it. I can pull blacks globally down a hair. And now what we're going to do, we're going to come apply some global edits. We're going to do 20 on vibrance. We'll do our 5 on saturation. And then we'll do, now you can click on this box and type in a number and then hit return, or you can of course move the slider. Now again, I don't want to apply sharpening to that background and create a lot of noise, so I'm going to pull this way down. And I think that's looking good. There is one thing in this image I don't like, and that is this little dark spot. So I'm going to click on my cloning or healing brush, and I make sure it's on heal. And forgive my accent, that is heal. Heal, and heal all refers to having a dog sit at your feet. A hill you might hike up, and healing an injury. So the same 3 words get pronounced all the same when you're a Toki. So let's come in here and we're going to select that little dark spot. I want to make sure that my healing is coming from the same zone of focus. So you don't want to have your healing jump way up here to something that's real blurry when this might be nice and sharp. So there we go. I got rid of that kind of obnoxious little dark spot there. This is kind of, I could come down here. That's kind of bothering me a little bit down here. Just clean that up a little bit. And there we go. Now that little, those kind of little things bother me a little bit. All right. I think now I want to address this background. Noise isn't too bad, but this is ISO 6400. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new mask and we're going to select the subject. Let's zoom out so you can see that. Again, remember how it does a nice job. But I don't want to apply what I'm about to apply to the subject, so I'm going to click invert, and now my background is nailed beautifully. And we're going to come in here and we're going to do our noise reduction, and just so you can see the effect, let me go ahead and zoom in on this corner. So there you can see a little bit of noise. And as I get that up high, and as I pull that sharpness back, it gets much smoother, creamier. Again, pull clarity, pull texture back a hair. There we go. Now, nice, smooth, high ISO background. Let me see what happens if we apply a little glow. No, we don't want that. Not really doing much for me on that. All right, I think overall, again, I might pull shadows back. Blacks a hair, you can see up here. My histogram's looking really nice. Nice distribution from blacks to whites. And overall, I don't know. Sometimes on bird images, I like to apply a little vignetting. I don't know if this one, it's going to enhance it much. Might a hair, just ever so slight. There we go. All right. Well, so that gives you some ideas of how I now use the Lightroom mask. Again, I'm not just going in and throwing in a bunch of global presets. I'm actually using the masking feature very specifically here. And I think what you'll find is it's going to let you do what you want to do exactly how and where you want to do it. And that's a huge thing when it comes to post-processing your images. I hope this video has been helpful. Please click the like and subscribe button down here on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't listened to the podcast, you just came across this video, please jump over whatever podcast app you like to use and search on Capturing Nature and click the like and subscribe there, and join us twice a month for Nature Photography Podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope you guys are having a great day. Bye-bye.